Hello, and welcome back to the Free on the Inside podcast. Today, we are spending some time with Aura Lynn. Aura has an amazing testimony. She struggled with a life of trauma and addiction. In November 2008, after leaving work, she and a friend went out partying. Driving home that night, Aura hit and killed a man on the side of the road. Absolutely unaware of the incident, she was completely devastated when law enforcement told her what she had done. Aura was then arrested for homicide and taken to the county jail. But God wasn't done with her story. Sit back and enjoy this powerful episode. Here's your host, Donna Sparks.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Free on the Inside podcast. I am so excited to be with you again today, and I'm so glad you have joined us for this special interview. I have my friend Aura with me today, and she has a tremendous testimony. You are going to be so glad that you tuned in to hear what she has to say today. So I hope that you enjoy the show today, and Aura, I am so glad to have you on. I can't wait to hear what God has given you to share and what He's done in your life. So I'm just going to give you the floor and let you share whatever God has put on your heart today.
Thank you so much, Donna. Such an honor and a privilege to be able to share what the Lord has done. We'll go back to 1972. I was raised by a couple of hippie parents, hence my name is Aura. And my papa was a Rolling Stone. And so my mother left him when I was about 2. She just got tired of that type of lifestyle. And so she grew up as an Army brat. You can see my grandfather in the back, and she's over here as a little girl. And so she was often moving, and she kept that instilled in her. So we moved a lot. I would just get comfortable, start making friends, and off we go. But I did get to visit a lot of places. I was born in California. I moved to Texas, Oregon, Washington State, Texas 2 times, Mexico a couple of times, Florida. But I would always come back to New Jersey because that's where my grandparents lived. So that was kind of like her home base. And I did a lot of my elementary, middle school, some high school there. So I kind of call that home. Yeah. And my grandfather was the male figure in my life. He was retired, and I would go hang out with him and the fellas. We'd have lunch and, clip coupons and go to the mall. I remember my grandfather was a Jewish man who married a Catholic woman. So growing up, it was a little confusing because we would have Hanukkah and Christmas and Easter and Passover. But I never made it into a synagogue or a church. I never had a Bible in my hand. I never really learned who the Lord was. And my mother, I would call her agnostic because she was confused. She didn't really know the truth. So she did a lot of searching in Western religions, Eastern religions, a little bit of things that were not in religion, like, tarot card readings and psychic fairs. And, I remember as a kid being at different kind of places like that. But, in the end of her life, she found Jesus and she knew him and she loved him, and she's gone to be with him now. So I'm grateful for the things that she learned that pointed her in the right direction of the truth. And so I was a rebellious child, probably shortly after my grandfather passed away, because he was always the one who pressed me and pushed me to do better in school. And my mom was a single mom, so I was a latchkey kid, and she didn't have a lot of time. And so I kind of was left to my own devices, and I didn't make the best of choices. And I think I had my first cigarette in my hand when I was about 7. Not that I started smoking then. My first drink, probably around the same age, open a can of beer for your mom's boyfriend and take a sip. But I didn't start until about 11 and 12 when I was in school in Lakewood, New Jersey. And, I looked a little older, so I hung out with the older crowd and started doing things that they did, and didn't go to school, cut school a lot. And my mother just couldn't handle me. She would bring me to the front of the school, and I'd leave out. So they were going to arrest her for my truancy. She sent me to a place called Violent Children's Residential Treatment Center. And that was my first taste of an institution. And so it was a co-ed facility. All you had to do is follow their rules for 6 months and you could go home. Simple enough, right? Well, week 2, I took about 7 girls. We went AWOL and all went to our respective places. It wasn't long before they caught up to me and I had to come right back. And start that process over. And then they diagnosed me uh, socially maladjusted, probably oppositional defiance, and tried to get me in some type of treatment and medication. And I always told the people what they wanted to hear, but I didn't ever really talk about any trauma, because I believe in my heart of hearts that the rebellion started with the trauma of abandonment, the issues of not having a father when everyone else had a father, feeling like there was something wrong with me, personally. And so I would cover that pain up, started with drinking and smoking marijuana, cigarettes, and so I would, dibble and dabble in other drugs, and just wouldn't do the right thing. So my mom couldn't handle me still. And at 15, going on 16, she said, well, let's move her. We'll make a geographical location change and that'll fix it. So we came to Florida, and I quit school because I knew everything. You couldn't tell me anything. Quit school, began work, and got my GED, and didn't really know what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I met this guy at 17 and ended up pregnant with my first daughter. And so the drugs, the alcohol, all that stopped. And the guy that I met, I don't even know how I met this guy. I was in a party house he had 4 roommates that were in Job Corps, and he's the one who doesn't smoke, doesn't drink, goes to church, loves the Lord. And I'm like, how did I get this square? Right.
Right.
The Lord has a sense of humor.
Mhm.
So I, did life with him. I think I was engaged for, 6 years with this guy, never really willing to commit to him. We ended up in Virginia, where he was from. And then I was isolated and alone. And he started to become pretty narcissistic and controlling. And I really didn't like my life at all. So I started drinking again and finding folks who drank. Um, and so while I was home, at one point, I put an application in for a program called Section 8. And so my mom called me about 2 years into us living up there and said, you got some letter from Section 8. I said, open it. And so they had approved me for a 1 bedroom for me and my daughter. And I packed up my little Datsun 210 and all her things, and we came down here and had our own little place and started back to college. I called myself a career college student, didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, and just took a bunch of prerequisites and worked part-time, and started hanging out with some of the folks, but not as wild as I was in the younger days because I have a kid now and trying to do better. But I did get my first DUI. I was working at a liquor store, and I would get, a bottle to go and drink at a bar and on the way home. And I got my first DUI in 1993. And so from there, they started making me go to AA. I had to go to AA and get my paper signed. But I didn't want to hear anything those people said. They were like a cult, they wanted to change me, right? They had all these great ideas, and they would talk about God a lot in there. And they would tell me you can make that chair your higher power. And I thought, that's just weird. These people are just weird. So I didn't really listen to them. We say I had the cotton in my ears for a long time, right? Just hard to pull it out and really see that I had an issue. So I would get the paper signed and do what I needed to do, but I could never get myself out of this revolving door. I had to pay these fines, go to these classes, do the things to get my license back, but I couldn't afford it as a single mom. And so I would get caught driving on suspended license. I'd go to jail. Maybe there'd be an open container. Maybe there'd be some marijuana on the floor. And I'd go to jail, and my mom would always save me. She'd come and get me. She was my best friend, and saved me all the time from myself. And 1996, I got a violation of probation, and I couldn't move. This is the first time she couldn't come get me. I had to sit there for 60 days. And I met Chaplain Westmoreland. And so here's this cute little church lady with gray curled hair. She sat the hairdresser for a long time with beautiful clothes and jewelry. And she came in telling us about how Jesus loved us. And I thought, this lady doesn't know anything. And then she told us her testimony about how she was drunk on the pew in church in 8th grade. And she said, next time they get up to praise, I'm going to get out the back door. And she got out to praise and worship, and the Lord arrested her. She couldn't move. And she found the Lord that day. She gave her life over to him. And from that day, he showed her visions of teaching women Bible songs in the jail, and she said, "I didn't even know how to play a guitar." And so I said the prayer with Chaplain. She started telling me about how Jesus loved me no matter what I did, and I thought, well, this is what I've been looking for my whole life. What do you mean? I just wanted somebody to love me for who I was, not for what I could do for them, what I had done. And so I started opening my ears just a little bit. And I said the prayer, but we call that 18-inch disconnect, right? I said it, I believed it in my head because I knew, but I never got it down here to my heart. And so after that 60 days, I went home and I skipped all the way home singing unto thee, oh Lord, who I lift up my soul, the song she taught me. And I got to the house and um, Jaleesa's dad was there, and there were dishes all over piled up to the ceiling. There was messes everywhere. My daughter had a big knot in her hair, and I forgot I was a Christian. I started cussing and carrying on. And if nothing changes, nothing changes, right? So I continued to do the same thing and expect a different result. Got back with those same people, jack of all trades. I did all kinds of things. Some I'm not proud of. They may call that human trafficking. Back then, we worked for a massage service. I did all kind of things. Sold flowers on the side of the road. I called myself a hustler, sold drugs, sold things, and just did all kind of things and didn't live a good lifestyle. And like I thought the Lord was just angry and mad at me because of who I was. So I never really wanted to talk to him because my vision was he was way far away, angry at me. I couldn't get it right. So why would I talk to him? And so I went on about my business, living my life, for me, selfish, self-centered. And 1998, my mom told me she had lung cancer
Oh, wow.
and that she was 49 and that they gave her 6 months to live. And I was like, whoa, like there's no way. I was in my 20s. There's no way in the world that and she had just found Jesus. Like she was a praying woman and, she was always talking to me about him. And I thought, well, her faith is going to help her. And she, had all these before, kombucha was the thing. There was this mushroom growing in the refrigerator, right? There was spinach everywhere, all these holistic type of treatments. And so in her last day, she was in hospice, and the chaplain came to me the last day I saw her and said, she's holding on because of you. You got to tell her goodbye. And I said, tell her goodbye? What do you mean? No way. And she said, you'll see. So I went in the room and lights are on and nobody's home. She's talking about my grandfather, talking to my grandfather, talking about all the angels. And so I got in the bed with her and I told her, you did a good job and I love you and I'm gonna miss you. And it was really tough. I cried pretty hard and she was gone the next day. And so I was heartbroken, like here's my best friend and the only one who's really been in my corner, only one there for me, and she's gone. So now what? So I had done all those prerequisites, and I'm like, well, nobody's going to save me. I have to save myself now. I need to do something. And so I really liked the way they took care of my mom, the nurses. And so I said, I'm going to be a nurse. And I went to Seminole State College, and I became an LPN first. And I really wasn't, too much into drugs and alcohol, studying and focusing on being the best I could, president's list, I like to get good grades because they give you accolades, right? And so after I completed the LPN class, I became an LPN, took the test, and I worked for a lady, and she gave me the handbook for my first client, home care. And this guy, Jart, he was really young. He fell off a roof. He worked for NASA and he was quadriplegic. And so this guy taught me everything I ever learned in the books. But she gives me the manual and I'm reading in like page 2. It's like, don't leave him alone with his wife. And I'm like, that's weird. Well, why can't you leave him alone with his wife? And she said, well, last time we left him alone, she let him smoke crack and he was on oxygen and blew his face up. I'm like,
Oh,
oh, okay.
wow.
This is where we're going to work. So Jart taught me his family dynamics, taught me way more than I ever bargained for. I thought, well, this will be a nice quiet job so I could study for my RN.
Right.
Right. But I did learn a lot. And, he taught me everything I learned in the books. He had a peg tube, a G tube. He coded on me. Everything that I ever learned in those books that I was fearful of. He had diabetes, needles. I had to do shots, and he helped me overcome a lot of those things. And so God always had me right where He needed me. And I got my RN in 2003. Through that time, I was with another guy for about 7 years. I don't know why that's my special number. And he was an alcoholic, drank a half a gallon, excuse me, half a gallon of vodka a day. And so I drank a lot more with him. But when I started going to nursing school, I really stopped doing a lot of those things and was really focused and really was trying to get away from him, but I just couldn't break that tie yet. And then I did when I graduated from RN school. And so I'm single in 2003, my first really nice car I buy. Like I had like 20 lemons, you go over a speed bump and the axle falls off, buy a car to yard sale for 250. Those are my kind of cars, right? So like I bought my first new car. I purchased my first home, and like I was just living the dream. This was like really a special time for me in my life. I was single, started working at like a real job in the hospital. They hired me on the floor. So my hiring manager, well, she liked to party, So we started going out, having a couple drinks, and then she wanted to get a little cocaine, and I might have knew where to get a little cocaine, and that's where I met my now ex-husband. And so he sold me the cocaine, and we became friends, and we would get high and talk about God. I don't know. He's always with you, right? Like no matter where you're at, he is there. So he would be with us there, in the middle of our mess, meeting us right where we're at. Well, we were talking about him. And so he ended up going to jail, and his baby's mom cheated on him, and then we became an item, I guess, afterwards. And he was not good for me, very toxic, sold drugs. I'm working as a nurse in the hospital, making 60 grand a year, and I'm selling drugs at the bar because I'm in competition. So I'm not any better than he was, right? So just my mentality was just really, really crazy. And so in 2008, I missed my period. I'm 35, my daughter's 16, and I'm like, oh, it must be menopause, And I go to
Mhm.
the doctor, and they're like, you're pregnant. And I'm like, they really weren't too, Joy. I
Yeah.
was like, I'm almost there. I can't be pregnant now. I had like great aspirations. Me and my charge nurse were going to travel the country and be travel nurses and all this stuff when our children got 6 to 18. And so Jordan is my miracle baby because I didn't think I could have any more children actually, and so that kind of turned things around for Ben. He wanted to get right and do the right thing, and he stopped selling drugs and started working on a real job. He was roofing, and I wasn't doing those things, and we were like really. Living the American dream, 2-car garage. So I had Jordan in January of 2008, and we were married in May of 2008. And I just thought everything was fine. In October 2008, a friend of mine said, "Hey, your husband got your friend Lacey pregnant," and I was like,
Wow.
"No way!" Like I just thought this girl's out of her mind. She's lying. Everything's so good. How would that happen? And so this friend is not just a friend, but she watched my daughter. I met them when they were 13 and 15, and they were my babysitters while I went to college. Um, her daughter's my goddaughter. They were like my little sisters. And so when I found this out, I had been clean and sober 2 years because I had a reckless driving in 2006. And so I had to do the Grove outpatient, which is like a rehab here outpatient, and I successfully completed that. And I did all the AAs I needed and had my paper signed. So I was good. And I didn't need a program of recovery. I was cured and healed. And so when I got this news, I didn't have a sponsor to call, and I didn't have a church family surrounding me. I didn't have any support system. So I called the same people and ended up going to the same places doing the same things. And so it wasn't but a couple weeks of me drinking. I was working in the hospital 12-hour shifts. So it was November 12th, 2008. and I had worked a 12-hour shift. It was a Wednesday, and I got off and I went home, and my daughter was there. And my daughter had recently been saved, and she was like, "Mommy, come to church with me tonight." And I was like, "I don't hear anything about God. You know,
Mm.
I'm going out. You're watching the baby. See you." And I went out that night and started at one place, and I hadn't drank in 2 years. I had lost 70 pounds after my son, besides the pregnancy weight, I had lost 70 pounds from my pre-pregnancy. And so I couldn't really drink. So I had like one drink. We went to another place. I had another drink. We ended up at the last place, and this guy who had sold me my Highlander, he was buying me drinks and drinks, and I kept giving it to my friend because I knew I couldn't drink that much. So on our way home, we dropped somebody off, and then we're on our way to take her back to her vehicle where we started at. And I'm asleep at the wheel. She's dead asleep because that guy from the toxology report, he had put Xanax in the drinks.
Oh, wow.
We had better plans that he thought were going to happen that night. And
Mm.
so I wake up to a loud crash and my windshield is burst. And so I'm trying to wake up Robin, like, did you hear what just happened? And she really can't wake up because she had way more than me. So I do a U-turn and come back over, and there's a guy waving in the road. And so my ex-husband at that point was really stalkerish, like, you can't keep my son from me and you can't leave me. And so I thought instantly he saw us at the bar. Oh my gosh, he threw a brick at the car. Like this is my mindset. So I drop her at the car. Her car was like a block away from that point. And I'm sitting behind Pizza Hut, scared to go home. Like, he's going to be there waiting for me. I don't know what he's going to do to me. And the police arrive. And he's like, you hit somebody. And I'm like, no. And I'm trying to tell him what I think happened. And he's like, no, ma'am, you hit somebody. I'm like, well, how's the guy? How is he? And this officer is so nice. Like, he's like, I don't know. We don't know till they cleared the accident. And I smoked cigarettes at the time. He's letting me smoke cigarettes outside the cop car, and just a really nice guy. And so we get to the station, and I'm sitting outside of his office in a chair, and he's calling his wife. And he said, "Hey, honey, what do you want me to bring for breakfast?" And I am like losing my mind. This is
Mhm.
my husband, and this lady walks by. She's like, "Oh, ma'am, are you okay?" And I really can't say anything, but she hears me say Jaleesa, my daughter's name. She's like, Jaleesa Lynn, and I'm like, yeah, my daughter, like, she's supposed to go to high school in 20 minutes. Like, you need to call her. And so she's like, yeah, I go to church with your daughter. She recently been saved. She walks different. She talks different. And I'm like, yeah, can you call her? So like all these little God moments. And then I get into the questioning room, and they have a folder, and it says homicide.
Wow.
And from there, I'm in a state of shock. Like, my everything just gets really blurry. It's like the Charlie Brown voices, and now they're really mad at me because they think I'm just ignoring them, and I'm just sobbing. I can't talk. I can't really hear what they're saying. And then they put the cuffs on me and take me to the county jail, real tight. And I know the guy is super mean. I don't know what he said, to be honest, but I know I was like hysterically crying by the time we got to the jail. Um, and then, they book you there, put you in the drunk tank. And I get in there and I see Exodus 14:14 on the wall. And this is the first time I wanted to get into population so I could get a Bible. I wanted to see, I knew the Lord was speaking to me, and it said, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, that he would fight for me.
Mm.
And he's been fighting for me ever since that day. I did get bonded out. My ex-husband bonded me out, and I was on bond, and awaiting drug court from that incident. I talked about that reckless driving because they didn't want me to get a felony, because then I would lose my nursing license. So I bonded out, but I knew I was going to go right back in because I was already on bond. So I stayed out for a little bit with my children, and they brought me back in. And so, long story short, I sat in Johnny Polk for 395 days awaiting trial. And I became Chaplain Westmoreland's assistant. I mean, you talk about favor. Like, I had a red band. You're not supposed to go anywhere, do anything. My husband's cousin was one of the COs. I was the I was the rec person. I got to stay out on rec and clean up for hours, picking up little pieces of dirt. So I did whatever I could to make my time go by fast, and really had a relationship with the Lord. Really started seeing how much He loved me and these girls that would come in. One in particular, her name was Stacy, and she was the first person I fasted and prayed with. She was the first person who told me that I was a royal priesthood. And this girl, she may have been in the county like 52 times, right? She's a frequent flyer. That girl could get out of attempted murder. I mean, I don't know what, we'd be like, boy, she's blessed. And I'll never forget that one time she came in there and she would be up on medical lock in the top. I was in the max hold, but we were allowed to walk around. And, I'd always go slip her some mints or a Bible study under her door. Wasn't supposed to do that. And, pray with her through the grate. And I'll never forget that time she came in and I was like, see, you keep getting blessed. And why do you come back? And she had the bluest eyes. And she said, I think it's God that keeps allowing me to go out there. And her eyes turned black. And I walked away from there and I was like, whoa. Like that was my first encounter with the demon. Like I just knew that he had her. And so I knew that something needed to be done. I ended up, when I went to court, they gave me, I thought I was looking at a 15-year sentence the whole time. And they came with the paper to sign, 4 years Department of Correction, 2 years community control, and 24 years probation. And I was like, well, that's not mapping.
Right.
Like, well, my lawyer probably thought if I told you that they couldn't double jeopardy charge you because you left the scene of the accident and it's DUI manslaughter, they made it DUI manslaughter enhanced and you were a first degree felon. And I'm like, oh, he said, yeah, you probably would have been hanging from the rafter, right? And I was like, so I didn't take the deal that day. I kind of went home and I prayed, not home, back to the cell, and I prayed and chaplain, I had a meeting with chaplain. She said, well, what's your alternative? I was like, yeah, what is my alternative? I don't have one. Like either I take it or I go to trial and then I could really get 30 years, right? So I took it and I went up the road to DOC and I stopped through Lowell and that was really, really rough, really tough, they weren't really nice to you at all, called you everything but a child of God. And so I by the grace of God, I got into a place called Gadsden, and this is a privatized prison. And they had a doggy program. They had horticulture, faith-based. They had all types of programs to better yourself, to learn about the trauma that you've been through. And so I did. I learned everything that I could while I was there. Every door that was open, I walked in it. I did, art therapy, counseling, whatever I could. Faith-based for a year, I really got to know the Lord. And it was so amazing. They would have, Miss Sizemore was on Mondays and she was Pentecostal, and there was hellfire and brimstone, Church of God would be there Tuesday. It was nothing but the word. There was no worship, really, kind of somber. Brother Billy was a clown and we would sing Father Abraham has many sons, right? And so we just had like a variety of people teaching us every day. And so I got to learn about the Lord from so many different aspects. And I just had a personal relationship with him. And I would talk to him and I would journal. And I remember in my mom's last days that she would journal really, really fast. And then, like, she would be talking to God, and then it would change. The handwriting would change, and it would be like, my child. And it would have like these Bible verses in it. And I thought, that's just kooky at first, right? And so I was like, you think you could talk to me like that, Lord? And so like I would journal just because I was like, if I keep doing it, maybe he'll do it. And he did. And he did it like not very many times. Like he didn't do it like every day. Maybe it happened like three times totality, right? But the second time he did, Habakkuk 2:2, he gave me, make it plain on the tablet. And I did. And I drew this picture and it was an 8-sided building and it had a prayer room and it had a kitchen and bathrooms and showers and and it was a transition home and I was like, wow, that's really awesome, Lord, because they need it. I mean, I wonder who's going to do it. So I finished doing my time, and I went to work release and I became the mother shucker at Lee and Rick's Oyster Bar. And I'll never forget that day. He said, I went to go get the job, and I had never seen an oyster in my life, and it was dark and dingy and smelled really bad. And I was like, Lord, this can't be the place. This is not it. And he was like, oh, you're going to be the light. And, not in a big
Mhm.
found anything, but in my heart, I was like, no, no, I'm not that bright. I'm really not that bright.
Right.
And so I did. I got to really, I remember being at the keg pouring beer with other work release guys, and telling them about Jesus at the keg, right? I just love the Lord. He'll show up anywhere, even the customers, telling them about my experience with the Lord. And so like I said, I have to reinvent myself when I get out. And they took my nursing license for being involved in a felony. So I began going to school to become a paralegal. I was waitressing and doing that. I was restored to my son. My daughter was grown and living with her father up there in Virginia. And God gave me some great promises. Like he would restore to me everything the cankerworm and locust had eaten. And he did that. And that he would give me the house that I didn't build with my own hands, with every good thing in it in Deuteronomy, right? And he gave me this efficiency apartment when I lived with my mother-in-law in Jordan first, and then this little apartment, right? We had a bunk bed and it had a TV and this little futon, and it even had a little room on the outside with a laundry room. I could put my bicycle in there, and everything I needed was there. And I was like, that's it. But like he did it again with the duplex, and then he did it again when he restored me to a home, better than the one that I lost. I lost everything when I went to prison. My ex-husband let him take like the granite countertops off the house before they foreclosed on it. Like he sold and gave away every heirloom I ever had. And so God restored all of those things. And, but more than that, my self-respect and, my love for myself, because he told me that I'm to love him with all my soul, with all my heart, with all my mind. And then my neighbor is myself. But I didn't love me for a long time because I worked the 12 steps under Celebrate Recovery in prison. AA had told me many times, you need to get a sponsor, you need to work the steps. And I was like, nah, 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 I'm not an alcoholic. That's so the bridge, right? And so I came to the end of myself there. Also in prison, I did something called RTU, which is a therapeutic community, like rehab on steroids. You got to snitch on people in prison. It was great, let me tell you. Uh, but it taught me a lot about myself and the trauma, like I said, that happened to me. And I stuffed trauma down so far that I didn't know my first sexual experience. I was raped at 12. When I started unfolding and allowing God to peel back these layers, I started to see how the enemy had a plan for so long to take me out, because he comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And that was what he was trying to do from the beginning, because he knew if God got a hold of me that I would not shut up to tell
Mhm.
people about how good he is and how he saved me and how he loved me. Like I said, I couldn't forgive myself. I would forgive them. I forgave Lacey. I did the 12 steps in prison. I wrote the letters. I forgave my father. I forgave my mother. I forgave everybody I could forgive, right? But I couldn't forgive me. I was the nurse that saved lives. How could I forgive me? Like I need to be a martyr. I need to be punishing myself forever, right? And I'll never forget Lee Swanson. At one point, she was the pastor's wife of a large church. She said, you know, if Jesus died on the cross for your sin to forgive you, do you think you're better than him? Oh, when she put it that way, I was like, oh no, what do you mean? How could I think that? She said, you can't forgive you, and he already did. And I was like, oh my gosh, Lord, and I mean, I'm not saying it was like, oh, I forgive myself, right? Like it was a process. Like I would still, get on my knees, Lord, help me to forgive myself. Help me to forgive myself because it took a little while. And then I did. I started allowing him to heal me, heal my heart and that brokenness, the abandonment issues and the things that I had believed about myself for so long, that I wasn't worthy, that I didn't deserve. I told you I was engaged 3 times for 7 years with a ring for 7 years. Like, playing house basically is all I did, right? And so I did, like I said, finally marry the wrong one. Did I ask God about that? Did I pray about that? No, I didn't. And so anyway, I knew about that vision in the back of my head. It was constantly there. I went before the judge who sentenced me because I was making less than I made shucking oysters as a paralegal, and I said I need my nursing license back. But you can't go and ask for the sorry, I thought it was all right, but you can't ask to get your license back until end of sentence, which is end of probation. So 4 years in, 2 years community control, and 2 years of regular probation, I went before the judge, and they released me of 22 years of probation, which is like they never do. You have to do like half of your time for them to do that. And so I was able to go before the board of nursing, and they restored my nursing license 5-1. I mean, I've seen so many miracles. Like I can't even begin to tell you how many miracles God has shown up in my life and the people around me. I didn't go back into the nursing field on the floor. I became a legal nurse consultant, and I worked for a large firm, making the same amount of money I made. You know, all those people said, "You'll never be nothing. You're a felon. You can't get a house again. You can't." Right? Everybody had all the naysayers, right? And God showed up every single time to prove those people wrong. That I could do all things through Christ who strengthened me. And you know, I'm not saying everything was rainbows and butterflies. I still don't have a license. I rode my bike 31 miles in the rain to work. You know, I sound like my grandfather, 20 miles in the snow, right?
Yeah.
And I did a lot of hard things, right? And I, you know, but I didn't go back to drinking,
Right.
right? God delivered me that day, but he gave me tools in my toolbox, and I'm so grateful for that because I get to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's a privilege to go in there and speak and tell people how he has brought me where he has. They may never ever open a Bible, but they'll listen to somebody who's been through something.
Right.
They'll say, maybe he loves me too, right? And so I get to teach Celebrate Recovery through our church at City Church, and the Recovery House fellows come in there, you know, another local charity or organization that helps guys, and I get to share my hope and strength with all type of folks every day. But back to that vision in 2019, we did a Daniel fast with the church, and after it, Brother Kip prayed with me, and he said, "What are you praying for?" And I was like, "Discernment." And so he was like, "Well, God's going to show you the stepping stones, and he's going to help you to walk right in them." And I was like, "Amazing." So he did. Like from there, the things just started rolling. I went to a request for applications with the county, didn't work out, right? But I had these 5 binders that I created, my business plan. Like I did like umpteen hours of work to get these things done by this 4 o'clock stamp time, and I missed it by 5 minutes, right? And I melted in the parking lot, forgetting that I stand on Romans 8 and 28, you know? But God does work all things together for the good for those who love him, who are called according to his purpose. So he did. Those binders, I took them to Ministry Possible. I call them Christian Shark Tank, right? 5 guys in the back of Northland Church, and I presented those binders to them, told them my deal, and they were like, "It's great, we love it, go get a house." I'm like, "All right, so you know who's buying the house? How much is the house? 500,000. Okay, like who's buying the house? I don't have the money to buy that, you know." And so I kind of dragged my feet. Didn't really have a lot of faith at that point. He said, you know, Larry said, "Why don't you find somebody who will just like sublease you the house so you don't have too much skin?" It's like, "Oh yeah, that sounds great. Who's going to sublease a house?" And I'm going to sublease it to felons and addicts that are going to change. Yeah, okay. And then I met Stan. And so God just surrounded me with great people. We got our first home. It was a duplex. It was a 2 bedroom, 1 bath on each side. Um, Everybody poured into that. We created 3 bedroom, 2 bath on both sides. And I mean, I think I probably spent 2 grand on the things in there. They donated brand new ACs in and out, cabinets, counters. I mean, I can't even tell you the miracles of people that came alongside the church. You know, they had a serve day. They made it beautiful. They put sod out there, you know, planted flowers. So when the girls got there, that they would know how loved they were. So they would know that God loved them no matter what mistakes they made, no matter what choices they made. And that's what we've done since we started. 2019, I said, we got that home. We renovated it. 2020, I got my house mother, gave my testimony at a Aspire rehab, and she was there. She was a nurse, and she's like, I'm going to help you with that clothing closet when I get out. We had a clothing closet to collect clothes for them and hygiene. And so she didn't know she was going to be my house mother. And she did that alongside of with me for 5 years. And our first angel was a hardcore addict, didn't know the Lord, HIV positive, had cancer, gave up 4 children in her addiction. And we got to see this girl, Lindsay, clean us over for the first year of her life. We didn't have a car at that time. We had a little golf cart, and she'd be on riding on the way back to AA in the back of that golf cart, yelling out, "Jesus loved you!" And people would be like, "Gosh, who's that? That's not Lindsay, is it?" You know. And she got to be reunited with one of her adopted children, and I just got to see her flourish, and many like that after. And I'm not saying it's all rainbows and butterflies because we've seen them relapse and we've seen them of the occult. I have one with me right now. Katie was my third angel, and I'll never forget her when she came to me. She said she has tattoos of all these, demonic figures on her, and she said, I'm a Satanist, And I said, we were walking along the waterfront. I said, all you got to do is say the prayer. She's like, it's not that easy. I said, it's that easy. You let him lie to you. You aren't held. You just say it, but you got to really believe it. Right. And so we said the prayer, and this girl, if I could tell you the miracles I've seen this girl, I mean, she's been with me 4 times, though. I'm telling you, the enemy has a stronghold on her that she goes back, but she's here again, and I'm believing for deliverance. We're gonna have deliverance here tomorrow with a couple gals I know, and I just believe God has her, just like He had me. Right? She thought, and probably still thinks a little that she's too bad, she's too dirty, that He can't clean her up, right? And I know that the enemy lied to me for so long, telling me the things that I did, that God couldn't take me in His kingdom. He's holy. Why would He want to talk to you? Why would He want to have anything to do with you? But when I started reading about Jesus and I started to see where He was, that He was one of me, that He was here with the least of these. He was there with the prostitutes, right? He was there with the tax collectors, with the people that nobody wanted to talk to. He wasn't over there in the Holy of Holies, He was right here with us, loving them, feeding them, right? And that's what I get to do every day of my life. I am so blessed. We got our second home on Christmas. Actually, he gave it to me on his birthday. I got his second home, and it's TARP, the Angels Restoration Place, because he's El Shaddai. He's our covering. He covers these ladies. And it's on an acre. It's beautiful. There's a koi pond. There's 2 duplexes. So between the 2 properties, I have 3 duplexes, a tiny home on one. We can house up to 22 women. The little clothing closet turned into a thrift store. We started in 700 square feet. We moved to 2,200, and now we're in 3,700. The girls get to volunteer here. It's way more than a thrift store. We get to feed the homeless. The gentleman that I hit, he was a homeless man. And so God has allowed me to, work in that community as well as in the recovery and addiction community, and so I'm so blessed that people come there every day. They get, on Tuesdays, we do 2 for 2. They get 2 free outfits and shoes and a bag in the dollar room any day. They can come get a hot meal. We get Chick-fil-A, Wawa, Starbucks. People from the community, different churches bring hot meals for them. And so every day we get to minister to somebody, and people shop there. They bring great name brand bags and shoes, and so it's really full circle how God has allowed us to be part of this community and see women restored. Now, every single girl who's come through my program, every single one that had not been baptized and had not said the prayer has done that. So like I know, like the government, which I don't get any money from them anyway, they may want to say, how many people have you had sober for 6 months after they left your program? Well, you know what? One day is a miracle in God's eyes, right? And one person saved who knows Him, who said that and meant it, they're going to see Him in glory. So whether they went back out, and Lindsay, my first angel, she passed this last year. She went back in after her, second or third stint. She did a essay to come back to us, and she was supposed to come on Saturday. She got released from DOC on Saturday, and they found her dead Thursday in the alley. And and I used to weep over that and feel like I failed some kind of way. And God said, you know what? Every day is a miracle. And so I changed my tune to say, you're right, Lord. Every day is a miracle. And she changed people's lives. And she showed, even like I get to go into the jail that I sat in. Chief Bedard allows me to go in Monday through Thursday. We bring Project Courage, Angels on the Inside. And those things that I learned in RTU in prison, I get to teach them, how to emotional intelligence, how to change the stinking thinking, how to do a resume, what does a budget even look like? Little simple things that you think we take for granted. I teach Celebrate Recovery in that, right? And so we do a 4-week class. And this last week, I didn't have a speaker for graduation. And I brought I brought her essay that she asked to come back. And I read that because, at the end, she was saying, if I could tell y'all girls anything, don't go back to your baby's dad. Don't go back to that guy. Don't listen to the lies, right? And so this is one of my, hard and fast rules in our ministry is no relationship for a year. You work on you, unless you're married, of course. I'm not saying that, but if you're not married, don't go searching for a guy. Work on you, right? And so I read that there wasn't a dry eye in the house, and Chief Bedard stood up and she said, because she was so proud of Lindsay when she saw her out there clean, right? And she stood up and she said, y'all don't know this, but my neighbor found her body when he was walking her dog, and she died of a fentanyl overdose. She wasn't getting high by herself. You think you got drug friends?
Right.
She said every single one of those friends left her in the woods to die. And I mean, there was not a dry eye. You could hear a pin drop in that room. And I thought, wow, like that was so impactful because we think we have friends, but those people weren't her friends. Those people that I ran with, they weren't my friends. Now I know that I have friends. I have people in the Lord, in my recovery community, in my church. I get to serve alongside, and that's what we teach in our program, God, recovery, and everything else. A firm foundation of Lord, because life is lifey. And if you don't have that foundation to stand on, to lean on, if you don't have that rock, you're going to fall down. And you're going to allow the enemy to whisper those lies in your ears, and you're going to listen again. So I'm just so grateful that he saved me and he allows me to talk about him. I get to go into the prison I came out of. I was just there yesterday for the reentry fair. And I also get to go to the work release I was at and, encourage folks. So if you're feeling like it's going to be too tough, it's going to be tough. Don't get me wrong. But if you take God with you, if you know my best friend, and if you really just spend time with him every day, Paul said we pray without ceasing. We're talking to him all day long. I'm not on my knees all day. I wouldn't be able to work. I wouldn't be able to run a ministry. I wouldn't be able to do the things that I do. But every day I'm talking to him about every little detail. What kind of shoes do we wear? That sounds stupid. Well, he goes before me. He knows where I'm going to be, right? So I'm just so blessed that he uses a wretch like me. And I thank you so much, Donna, for allowing me to come and speak. And my dogs are having a fit. I think somebody got.
Well, I love how he brings things full circle, and it's obvious that he has done that in your life, and it's amazing that you get to go back and minister in the places where you were. That's just an awesome testimony, and to what he's doing in your life currently. That's just fantastic. It's amazing. But before we leave today, would you mind praying over the viewers?
Absolutely, absolutely. Father, we just thank you, Lord. We thank you and praise you for who you are. We thank you for each person on the other side of this, Father God. We just thank you that you know all about their heartaches. You catch every tear in a bottle. You know all about their fears and what is going on in their lives on that side, Lord. And I just ask that you would be with them, that you would show them the path, that you would open doors that need to be open, Father, that you would shut those that need to be shut, and that you would remind them when the enemy tries to whisper who they were, that you would remind them who they are in you, that they are more than a conqueror, that they are an overcomer, that they can do anything with you, Father, that they're not going to be doing anything without you. And I just ask that you would just help them, Father, when times get tough out here, when it seems tough to get a job, when there's naysayers, that they don't believe it, that they just keep pushing forward no matter what, that they just keep walking by faith and not by sight, knowing that you can do anything but fail. And I thank you. I thank you for this ministry that you have, that you can allow folks to hear about your glory. And I thank you for saving me and saving them. to reach back in the fire, to help those that only they can help, Father. And I thank you and praise you for who you are. We love you in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Aura. You've been such a blessing today. And thank you, viewers, for tuning in again to Free on the Inside podcast. If today you have been blessed and touched by Aura's testimony and you'd like to reach out to her, you can do that by writing to us at Story of Grace Prison Ministry, P.O. Box 13, Lexington, Tennessee 38351. And we are praying for you. We believe in you, and we'll see you in the next episode. Goodbye.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you were blessed by the show. If you would like to reach out to any of our guests, or if you would like to make a personal request for prayer, you can write to us at Story of Grace Prison Ministry, Post Office Box 13, Lexington, Tennessee 38351. We read every letter and take every request to God in prayer. You are loved and you are seen. We hope you will join us next time on the Free on the Inside podcast. Goodbye.